So today we will be discussing Fredericks. So let me, to begin with, let me give you a brief overview of the initial portion that we discussed yesterday. I referred Riggs has been the pioneer in the field of comparative public administration, a very important theorist in public administration as a discipline as such. But his contribution in the field of comparative public administration and development administration had been incomparable. Not only he can be considered as a pioneer in the field, he is also considered as the foremost theorist when it comes to comparative public administration and development administration. Riggs, while discussing public administration as a discipline, he maintains that in the study of public administration, there has been significant changes in the post-World War period. And he identified three directional changes in the study of public administration. What are those changes? Three important shifts in the study of public administration. What were those changes or shifts? Normative to empirical. Then ideographic to nomothetic. And non-ecological to ecological. Now, what is this nomothetic? Pardon? Yes. The key, the important aspect as far as the nomothetic studies are that it aims at developing generalizations. It aims at developing principles. That's what is key in nomothetic. Ideographic is something descriptive. It's a country by country study, case by case study, a more descriptive study. And the normative to empirical, that means the focus shifting towards more and more empirical, close experimental studies. And non-ecological to ecological, that is considering the environment, considering a particular administrative system in totality, in the backdrop of its surroundings or environment. That's non-ecological to ecological. Apart from this, we did also discuss that Riggs used multiple tools or methodologies in his studies, and while developing his theory, he majorly relied on how many methodologies? Three methodologies. What are those? Structural functional approach, ideal type model, ecological approach. And we also had a brief outline with regard to what is structural functional approach. We did also discuss in brief that broad outline, broad overview of ecological approach and the ideal type model that already we have discussed while discussing Max Weber. The first model that he developed by using the ideal type model was Agraria and Industria model. The Agraria, Transitia and Industria model. But again, it immediately came under criticism, severe criticism. And in order to address those criticism, what did Riggs do? He did actually address to this criticism, but he did not address those criticism by modifying the same model. Rather, he replaced those models with a new set of models. What is that new set of model? That is fused, prismatic, and diffracted or diffracted. And if you take into account this model, did Riggs develop this model completely independent of the Agraria Industria model? No. In fact, that was based on the Agraria Industria model. So that means the fused moreover displayed the characteristic of Agraria. So fused society was nothing but the Agraria society. Whatever he depicted through the model Agraria, that was that in the that became the basis for the development of the model fused. The same the Industria, in fact, the characteristics that define the Industria model or Industria society, that in fact was the same for the diffracted or diffracted society. And prismatic society similarly they replace the transitia. So in a similar way, we can say that fused is characterized with, broadly, fundamentally, fused is characterized with particularism, ascription, particularism, and diffused pattern or functional diffusion. On the other hand, the diffracted society is characterized with achievement, universalism, and functional specificity. So fused society is characterized with ascription, particularism, and functionally diffused or functional diffusion. Single structure performing multiple functions. Diffracted society is characterized with achievement. Opposite of ascription is achievement. Opposite of particularism is universalism. And opposite to functional diffusion is functional specificity. Single structure performing single function. With regard to this, what is prismatic characterized with? Combination of both. And see, the prismatic society, the name carries a significance. Prism. From there, he has developed this name, prismatic. So it is prism. Like, there is a single light, and going into it and getting diffracted. So thereby, if you take into account this society, what are the characters that is there within this society? Characters of both the fused as well as the diffracted. So in this, what are those characters? Ascription, achievement. And in this, what is that character? Attainment. Particularism, universalism. And in this context, what is this character? Selectivism. Functional diffusion, functional specificity, polyfunctionalism. So these characters basically depict the coexistence, the existence of both. Like, let's say, if you take into account selectivism, this expresses the existence of both particularism as well as universalism. Attainment explains the existence of both ascription as well as achievement. Polyfunctionalism explains the existence of both functional diffusion as well as functional specificity. Like for example, so you might be actually, let me give an example that will appeal to us immediately. We have political parties or not? बच्चों, political parties तो जानते हो? In India we have political parties, those are democratic or not? अरे हाँ कि नहीं? अच्छा, कौन इतना तेज है सर बोल रहा है? So if you take into account officially, they would have election, that will have been office bearers and all these things. Almost all the political parties, no exception. I'm not referring to any one. So officially, the political parties, they are required to have office bearers, maybe president, vice presidents, or general secretaries, or treasurers, whatever these positions are there, various office bearers are there, and they need to go for, let's say, regular elections for these positions. Typically, I'm not referring to any one, almost in all organizations, all the political parties without exception. Do you think, because see, officially, what is the basis? Anyone can fight the election. Anyone can win the election on the basis of merit. That is, which character? Diffracted or fused character? Huh? That is a diffracted character. But when actually it comes to occupying this position, either they have to belong to a particular family, or let's say particular group to which they need to have loyalty to the individuals having the actual influence. So there, it is not exactly the universalistic character that comes into play. Rather, what comes into play? Particularism. So this is something selectivism. So the combination of which characters? Universalism and particularism. That's what, when we'll study Riggs, we'll find he explains these transitional societies, moreover these post-colonial societies, in a very, very apt manner. Especially if you take into account Indian context, our society, politics, and more particularly administration, his theory explains very nicely, very appropriately. And that is what he was aiming at. Because he was aiming to understand which societies, these post-colonial, less developed, developing societies. So that is why his theoretical focus was on the prismatic society that was previously built through the term transitia. And that is why I was referring the models, the fused and diffracted, or for that matter previously the Agraria and Industria, were sketchy in nature. Because in order to theoretically develop and make the model sustainable, theoretical develop prismatic society and make the prismatic society as a model sustainable, and in order to move forward with its let's say ideas or explanations, it was required to develop relative models. So in relation to this, because the prismatic model can be developed in relation to fused or in relation to diffracted. So that is why the theoretical focus has been on prismatic model, and the fused or the diffracted were merely sketchy in nature. That was the very requirement of the theory, that in order to theoretically develop prismatic society, there was a requirement to develop the fused model, or for that matter, diffracted model. The focus of the theorist, or the focus of the theory itself, was not on fused or the diffracted.